Great to have you with us on ET Now Digital. Could you walk us through what the key highlights of this year's budget announcement were for you?
Okay. So thanks, Varun. The key highlights, on an overall basis, is that this is a huge spending budget. There's a huge outlay for infra specifically. And infra is a sector which, when big investments go in infra, they do create a lag demand for real estate. So that obviously is all to the good. Right. From a real estate standpoint, specifically, there have been incentives announced for affordable housing. The tax incentives have been extended by a year. The interest, the deduction incentives for affordable housing have again been extended, which is great. On the REITs, there have been two very important announcements. One is that FPIs will be allowed to invest in bonds of the REIT, and B, the TDS deduction on the dividend flow in the REITs will no longer be there, which is again extremely good. You would obviously have liked some additional steps on real estate sector generally, but I think given everything else that's happening, including the very benign interest rate regime that's going on, I think the demand for real estate will continue to be strong and grow even stronger after this budget.
Right. So thank you for flagging off the correlation between all of these announcements and demand in the real estate sector. But now that these issues, let's say, have at least initially to a certain extent been ironed out, what do you think are the forward triggers that still need to be adjusted for in order for us to really see a broad scale recovery in your sector?
So, really, if you see in the last 4 to 5 months, at least in the geographies that we operate in, we are seeing a pretty secular uptick in demand. Coming from the lockdown quarter, almost from August onwards, we are seeing demand beginning to come back. And not only in the affordable or the mid-income range housing, but even in the premier and the luxury range housing, currently. And this we are seeing in Delhi, we are seeing in Lucknow, we are seeing in Chandigarh and Gurgaon, obviously, and other geographies that we operate in. It's also corroborated by the fact, by when you look at the sales numbers reported by the other developers. I think apart from the general pent-up demand, if you will, the low interest rate regime is clearly one of the biggest drivers. The third thing, I think also what's happening, which is tending to sort of, if I may say so, strengthen the sales numbers of the bigger organized players, is that the smaller unorganized players are under severe stress. So in some sense, there's also a market shift that's happening from the multitude of smaller players to the fewer bigger players, and not only in the NCR region, but also I think across geographies. On the commercial real estate side, I think obviously the pandemic had its challenges, but we believe that in the next couple of quarters, things should start reverting back, both in the offices and in the retail. We're already seeing the pickups happening now.
All right. Thank you so much for that elaborate answer, sir. Finally, from us today, conclusive comments on the budget. Now, we know obviously you like the announcement. What would, it's clearly the government is now pro-economy and pro-market. They're not trying to tax the rich more, or even the middle class for that matter. So do you think now the road is essentially being paved for a very pro-markets and economy government going forward?
Well, if this budget is an indication, clearly, the government has set out its strategy for more infra push, more health push, far greater privatization, far greater monetization of resources, including railway freight corridors and oil pipelines, etc. The absence of a tax hike, I think, is a huge positive, in some sense. Possibly the single biggest positive in this is the absence of what did not happen. So I think all of this look to be like it's clearly in a pro-growth mode, I would say. So not just pro-business or pro-markets. It's, I think, in a pro-growth mode, which I think is what India needs to do right now.
All right, Mr. Tyagi, well, thank you so much for taking out the time to talk to ET Now Digital, and we look forward to having you back at the channel very soon.
Thank you.